Chapter 1326. Genius Hong Luan 4. Young Luo Feng, I didn't expect you to look so perfect in men's clothes. Gee, if you were a man, I would probably have a crush on you. Hong Luan walked around young Luo Feng. The more she looked at her, the more she was satisfied. As she said, when young Luo Feng appeared in the crowd, no woman was able to take their eyes off her. Hu Li was also stunned. He didn't expect that young Luo Feng would be so handsome and charming in men's clothes. God was really unfair, gifting her both a perfect face and peerless talent. Such a person was a favorite of fate and had all the favor granted by God. Seeing that Hong Luan was stunned by her looks, young Luo Feng smiled wickedly and flirtatiously lifted her chin with a finger. Remember what you promised me, Hong Luan. Recovering from her thoughts, Hong Luan patted away young Luo Feng's hand and gave her a black look. Do you really think you are a man? How dare you molest me? I heard that you're already married, and your husband is rather jealous. I don't want him to give me a hard time for molesting his wife. After saying this, Hong Luan hurriedly turned around, patted her hot cheeks and exhaled heavily. If young Luo Feng were really a man, she would be infatuated with her. Of course, as long as she had forgotten the person in her heart. Let's go, young Luo Feng said, stretching lazily. Aren't you in a hurry to go back to the governor's estate? I'll help you finish this matter as soon as possible. Hong Luan nodded. It's not far from here to the governor's estate. We can be there within a day. Young Luo Feng, no matter what happens, I will protect you. This was her promise. She used the rest of her life to fulfill this promise. Young Luo Feng, Hu Li went up to young Luo Feng. I think you'd better not smile at any women when you wear men's clothes. Otherwise, young Master Yun Xiao will have to compete with both men and women. I don't think he could handle it. Young Luo Feng shrugged, I'm just kidding. Besides, do you think Hong Luan is the kind of person who isn't mentally strong enough? If Hong Luan wasn't mentally strong enough, she wouldn't be where she was today. Hu Li nodded and quickly followed young Luo Feng on the journey to the distance. The East Province. In the governor's estate, a middle-aged man was sitting in the seat of honor, his eyes cold and his face somber. Luoner hasn't come back yet. Governor, Miss is on her way back. She'll be back soon. As soon as he finished, a figure rushed into the hall and shouted cheerfully, Governor, Miss has come back. What? The governor, who looked solemn, rose to his feet as he heard this with an imperceptible gleam of joy in his eyes, but the next minute he looked serious again. Humph, I'll ask her where she's been all these years. Did she forget she has a home? With that, the governor was about to walk out of the hall followed by a group of people. However, before he lifted his foot, a fiery red figure had appeared before him. Dad, I'm back, Hong Luan said slowly, looking up at the governor. The governor was going to speak, but the next words she said made him turn pale. Chapter 1327. Scum 1. Father, I came back this time to announce something, said Hong Luan, holding the hand of the young man by her side, with a sly smile hovering on her red lips. This is my man, young Luo Feng. At first, the governor's eyes were fixed on his baby girl, and when he heard this, he turned pale and turned his eyes to the young man standing beside Hong Luan. The young man, dressed in a white robe, was peerlessly handsome, with a wicked smile in his dark, deep eyes. Looking at his eyes, you would feel like you were going to be sucked into them. Danger, yes. Young Luo Feng, in the governor's eyes, was handsome yet dangerous. His wickedness was irresistible and the smile on his face was awe-inspiring. The governor's face darkened. Luoner, stop messing about. I have chosen a fiance for you. You must marry him whether you want to or not. Dad, Hong Luan sneered, why do you want me to marry him? Is it because he is the son of the North Province's governor? Have you ever thought about whether I'll be happy after marrying him? The governor frowned and said helplessly, Luoner, I believe you'll be happy after marrying him. Besides, you two have been on good terms since childhood. Why are you so opposed to being his wife now? Dad, it's enough. Except for young Luo Feng, I won't marry any man. Taking a parting shot, Hong Luan held young Luo Feng's hand and was going to leave. The governor flew into a rage. Luoner, stop. Hong Luan paused and stopped, and she lowered her eyes to conceal the cold resolve in her eyes. Young Master Yun, the governor glanced up at young Luo Feng and said coldly, Luoner is the heiress to our governor's estate, and she's destined to marry some man of the same status as her. With your pretty face, it must be easy for you to get women to fall for you. Why are you pestering my daughter? He was implying that young Luo Feng had befuddled Hong with his looks. Hong Luan's eyes were filled with anger. Just when she was going to refute her father, the young man beside her took her hand and patted her arm gently. Young Luo Feng raised her wicked black eyes and looked back at the governor who had turned blue with anger. No one can force Hong Luan to marry someone she doesn't like. The young man's voice was powerful and domineering. With that, she held Hong Luan's arm and walked slowly out of the hall under the surprised stare of the crowd. The governor's estate had beautiful scenery. Young Luo Feng, holding Hong Luo Feng's arm, didn't stop until they came to the aisle of the backyard. Hong Luan turned to appreciate the perfect profile of young Luo Feng and said sincerely, Young Luo Feng, thank you. If you were really a man, I would definitely marry you. Young Luo Feng raised her eyebrows. Even if I were a man, I would only marry a person named Yun Xiao. If she was a woman, she would marry Yun Xiao. If she were a man, she would still marry him. In her lifetime, she would only marry one person, Yun Xiao. Titter. Hong Luan couldn't help but laugh and her eyes turned crescent-shaped. I really envy you and your husband. What I want is nothing but a monogamous marriage in conjugal bliss. If there is someone else between my husband and me, I would rather stay single for my whole life. She would never abandon this principle for anyone. Looking at the sadness on Hong Luan's face, young Luo Feng was going to say something, but then a joyful voice came from ahead. Chapter 1328. Scum 2. Luoner, you've come back. Hong Luan suddenly froze. She took a deep breath and held young Luo Feng's arm. With a smile on her beautiful face, she looked at the man walking towards her. It's been a long time, Ling Chen. It was a handsome, well-groomed man who had a noble temperament. Holding a folding fan in his hand, he was really a personable, charming beau. Hong Luan, he is. Ling Chen turned to young Luo Feng and frowned, apparently with disapproval. Hong Luan smiled and her smile revealed no emotion. Even so, young Luo Feng still felt the force of Hong Luan's grip on her hand. My man, young Luo Feng. Hearing Hong Luan's words, Ling Chen's handsome face darkened. Luoner, don't forget, I'm your fiance. Fiance, Hong Luan sneered, don't you have a woman you love already? Since you love her so much, you should be responsible for her. Why do you still want to marry me? Ling Chen scowled. He seemed to be thinking of the woman who he was crazy about, and a helpless gleam flickered across his eyes. Luoner, our marriage was decided by our parents and can't be cancelled, but my father promised to allow Chuer to be my concubine, and you to be my only wife. Luoner, I'm sorry. I hope you can understand me. Hong Luan sneered, don't you think you're hurting the woman you love by doing this? No, Luoner, you don't understand Chuer. She is a good girl and she has already agreed for me to marry you in order to save me from troubles. Out of compassion for her, I'll marry her as my concubine before I marry you. I came to propose to you because she has forgiven me. Mr. Chen hurriedly explained, for fear that Hong Luan would refuse him. If she refused, his father certainly wouldn't let him marry Chuer. Hong Luan's eyes turned colder. You feel compassion for Sha Chu, but don't you feel compassion for me? How come? Luoner, you'll be my wife, and she can only be my concubine. Her position is beneath yours, so I feel compassion for her. As for you, I'll give you the most important position. I don't think I owe you anything. Get out. Hong Luan's heart was filled with anger. Get out of here. I'll never marry a scum like you. Luoner. Ling Chen was anxious and was going to come up and grab Hong Luan. Before he did it, he was stopped by a snow-white figure. Young Luo Feng tightly held Ling Chen's hand, and her wicked eyes were filled with coldness. Hong Luan is my woman. If you dare to touch her, I'll rip off your arm at once. Ling Chen scowled. Hey, Luoner is not a woman you deserve. If you don't want to die. Bang. Before he could finish, Hong Luan rushed to him without warning and kicked him hard on the chest, and he flew away. Ling Chen, you really let me down. I wish I had never met you. Get out of my face. Hong Luan glared at him and her voice was angry. Besides, if you dare to insult young Luo Feng again, I'll cut your tongue at once. Ling Chen stood in amazement. He had known Hong Luan for years, and it was the first time she attacked him to protect someone else. Especially, Hong Luan called this gigolo her man. She was cheating on him. Chapter 1329, Scum 3. Luoner, Ling Chen jumped to his feet and asked Hong Luan, pointing to young Luo Feng, you are so cold to me because of this gigolo. You would never treat me like this before. 10 years ago, you said you would marry me. Gigolo. Young Luo Feng squinted and a dangerous light flashed through her eyes. Ling Chen, Hong Luan's face turned colder, and she stared at his handsome face and said coldly, yes, I wanted to marry you, but that was 10 years ago. Do you think I betrayed you because I have young Luo Feng? No, you are the one who really betrayed me. Anger welled up within Ling Chen. Luoner, I'm a man. No man will only have one woman. But women are different. A woman has to be loyal to her husband until her death. Don't you understand that? Why can a man have more than one woman, while a woman must be loyal to one man? I, Hong Luan, will never compromise my principles. If my husband can't be faithful to me, I won't marry him. Yes, even though she once loved Ling Chen, she hid her love deep in her heart after he fell in love with another woman. But now it seemed that she made a wise choice. When she was little, she had no idea that Ling Chen was such a disgusting scum. No man will only have one woman. Young Luo Feng gave a wicked smile. This is just the pretext of men for their lasciviousness. What's the use of a man who can't even control his sexual desires? Hong Luan, this kind of man doesn't deserve you. Hong Luan cast a chilly glance at Ling Chen. Don't bother me again, or else I'll beat you up every time I see you. Luoner. Seeing that Hong Luan and young Luo Feng turned to leave, Ling Chen cried out anxiously. However, he was not as talented as Hong Luan since childhood, so he never dared to provoke her, let alone at such a time. Therefore, he restrained his inner impulse and looked anxiously at their disappearing figures. At this moment, he thought of the good old days he spent with Hong Luan, and at the same time, the beautiful smiling face of the woman he loved also popped up in his mind. For some reason, when he looked at Hong Luan's receding figure, his heart ached. Young master, a servant hurried in. Ling Chen frowned. What's the matter? Miss Xia has had a relapse. What? Ling Chen's face suddenly changed and he immediately forgot about Hong Luan, his eyes anxious. Let's go back to our mansion now. Many years ago, the governors of the East Province and the North Province were intended to be united by marriage, so the latter built a mansion in the East Province to foster their bond. However, no one expected that Ling Chen would fall in love with a commoner, and Hong Luan, angry at his betrayal, rejected the marriage and ran away from home. At this moment, as soon as Ling Chen entered the mansion, he heard a sharp cough. The sound made his heart ache and he hastily pushed the door open. Sure, how are you? Cough. Hearing his voice, the woman in bed raised her head and a feeble smile appeared on her delicate and beautiful face. Young Master Ling, why did you come back? The most important thing for you is to find Miss Hong Luan and clear the air. I'm fine, don't worry about me. The woman couldn't be compared with the gorgeous Hong Luan. However, compared with Hong Luan's domineering demeanor, such a tender woman was exactly what most men loved. Chapter 1330, Scum 4. No wonder Ling Chen was infatuated with her. You're more important than Hong Luan. Ling Chen hurried up to Xia Chu and held her delicate shoulder, his eyes filled with love for her. If my father hadn't said that I couldn't marry you unless I married Hong Luan, I would never marry her. She is a shrew and is no match for the loving and caring person you are. Xia Chu buried her head in Ling Chen's arms, her face delicate and pale. Young Master Ling, it's my fault. If it weren't for me, you and Miss Hong Luan would have already been married. If Miss Hong Luan doesn't want me to stay here, I'm willing to leave you. As long as you're well, I'm willing to do anything. The woman raised her head, with tears in her eyes, and her voice was so soft and tender that no man could resist her charm. What are you talking about? I'll never leave you alone. I just feel sorry that you can only be my concubine. Ling Chen put his arms around Xia Chu's shoulders. In my life, you're the only person I feel compassion for. Xia Chu shook her head. No, the one you should feel compassion for is Miss Hong Luan. Her. Ling Chen sneered, isn't it enough for her to be my wife? Must I have her as my only woman? A monogamous marriage? That is ridiculous. And she even hooked up with a gigolo after she ran away from home. What? Xiao covered her mouth in surprise. Miss Hong Luan betrayed you? How? How could she do such a mean thing? A woman should be loyal to her husband and never betray him until her death. After saying this, Xiao vowed, young Master Ling Chen, I'll never be unfaithful to you in my life. Unfortunately, my family is not strong enough, so I can't become your wife. Otherwise, I would fulfill a wife's responsibilities, manage the family well, and select proper concubines for you. She was implying that Hong Luan didn't fulfill a wife's duty by stopping Ling Chen from taking a concubine. As a wife, shouldn't she help her husband select concubines and manage the family well? Even though Hong Luan was the heiress to the governor's estate, even though she wouldn't go to the North Province but stay here to inherit the East Province after marrying Ling Chen, she had no right to stop Ling Chen from taking a concubine. A wife must do her duty well, or else she was not qualified to be a wife. If Hong Luan was as understanding as you, I wouldn't have to worry so much. Ling Chen sighed and looked helpless. Young Master Ling, Miss Hong Luan must be afraid that I will compete for status with her, so she behaved like this. I'll talk to her and explain it for you tomorrow. What do you think? Xiao said softly, holding Ling Chen's hand. Ling Chen paused. Sure, you haven't recovered, you'd better not. It doesn't matter. My life was saved by you, so it's my duty to explain this for you even though I'm still sick. Xiao stared lovingly at Ling Chen, with a tender smile on her pale face. When it came to any man, he would be touched by a woman understanding him and also being infatuated with him like Xiao. Ling Chen was deeply touched. Sure, you've done so much for me. I promise I'll never let you down. That promise alone is enough for me. Xiao put her arms around Ling Chen's neck and sent her soft, warm lips to his. The room was brimming with an erotic atmosphere, and the two bodies blended into one. Chapter 1331. Feigning Illness 1. In a restaurant. No sooner had Hong Luan entered than the waiter came to greet her respectfully. Miss Hong Luan, welcome back. Did anyone use my box when I was away? Hong Luan glanced at the waiter and asked. Well, the waiter wiped the sweat from his forehead and looked carefully at Hong Luan. Miss Hong Luan, when you were away, young Master Ling Chen once visited here with a girl. I didn't dare to stop young Master Ling Chen, so, quote. Ling Chen. With a girl. A cold gleam flashed through Hong Luan's eyes, and she said domineeringly, I don't want anyone to touch my things. Immediately throw away the tables and chairs in that box and replace them with brand new ones. I'll only give you a quarter of an hour. Don't make my friend wait too long. The waiter quickly nodded. When he spotted the white-clad young man closely following Hong Luan, he was stunned by his handsomeness. He had met so many people over the years, but he had never seen a man so good-looking who was even more beautiful than a woman. One more look at him and I'll gouge out your eyes. Seeing the waiter staring straight at young Luo Feng, Hong Luan scowled and snapped, besides, since I've booked this box permanently, even though I wasn't here, no one should be allowed to use my box. If you still dare to let anyone else in, your restaurant will be shut down. Young Luo Feng, let's go. Hong Luan held young Luo Feng's hand and headed toward the second floor. Young Luo Feng raised a wicked smile. She didn't shake off Hong Luan's hand but let her pull her into the box. Bang! Hong Luan kicked the door of the box open. Glancing over the clean, elegantly decorated box, she frowned and her eyes were burning with a raging fire. It seems that I can't wait for the restaurant staff to clean the box up. I can't stand seeing these tables and chairs anymore. Boom! Releasing a great power from her sleeve, Hong Luan destroyed all the tables and chairs. She clapped her hands and then turned to the waiter who rushed in after hearing the noise and smiled. Remember, since I gave you the money to book this box belongs to me. Without my orders, no one else is allowed to enter here. Get out of here now. The waiter was frightened for his life by her words. Soon a group of people hurriedly came in, took the tables and chairs away, and placed brand new ones in the box. Hong Luan sat down and poured a cup of tea for young Luo Feng. Then she raised her eyebrows and looked at young Luo Feng. Young Luo Feng, do you think I'm too overbearing? Young Luo Feng took a sip of tea and slowly put down the teacup. Being overbearing is not a fault. If someone abhors your character, it only proves that they don't love you. Besides, you didn't do anything wrong. Since you gave money to the restaurant to reserve this box, they had no right to allow others to use it. So, there's nothing wrong with what you did. Hong Luan laughed, her eyes filled with joy. Yun Luo Feng, I think we'll become confidants. Yun Luo Feng squinted, I hope so. By the way, Hong Luan, do me another favor. Just name it. As long as I can, I'll help you. Soul fruit. Help me find a soul fruit. And by the way, find out what happened to the kid who was following me. Hong Luan's subordinates would do a better job than her concerning these matters. Chapter 1332, Feigning Illness 2. Therefore, she entrusted Hong Luan with this matter. Hong Luan blinked her eyes. That isn't just one favor, but 2 favors. If I help you with these 2 favors, how will I benefit? I'll settle Ling Chen for you. However, I do not wish to oppose the North Province at this moment, so I still require you to handle it personally. She could help Hong Luan to deal with Ling Chen, but he was the young master of the North Province governor and the aftermath would require Hong Luan to personally settle it. Deal. Hong Luan's hands heavily slammed on the table. All of a sudden, she wasn't able to control her own strength and had the brand new table had once again been smashed into 2 chunks. Hong Luan's expression was somewhat awkward. I accidentally used too much force. I'll have the restaurant bring another table again. In addition, you don't have to worry about the North Province's governor taking action against you. In any case, I, Hong Luan, am the East Province's future governor. Even if they are courageous enough, they would never dare to touch someone I want to protect. Yun Luo Feng quirked her brow. Your father intends for you marry with Ling Chen. Isn't he afraid that the East Province will fall into the North Province's hands? Nope, Hong Luan shook her head. Getting married to Ling Chen is only a formality. Even if we do get married, I would never follow him to the North Province. My father only has 1 daughter and I definitely have to inherit the East Province in the future. However, the situation in the continent as of now isn't stable, and my father making me connect by marriage is only so that there's a guaranteed relationship between the 2 provinces. One was the East Province's future governor while another was the North Province's heir. With them connected by marriage, it was bound to allow the 2 factions to be tightly bound together. After Hong Luan explained this, she snorted once again. My father has become muddle-headed after getting older and thought that a marriage could solve all the problems. I don't have to rely on a marriage to obtain help. Just by relying on my own strength, I can still make the East Province last for over 1,000 years. When the woman was speaking, the aggressiveness between her brows had evidently spread out and her heart-rending voice echoed throughout the cabin for a long time. Miss Hong Luan. The waiter walked in through the door and spoke respectfully. That lady who came to the restaurant together with young Master Ling Chen stated that she wishes to meet with you. Hong Luan stared blankly. Sha Chu, why has she come? Let her in. Yun Luo Feng sipped her tea and asked, what do you think about her personality? I'm not sure, Hong Luan shook her head. I've only met with her a few times. In addition, I do not have any malice towards Sha Chu. All the fault lies in that dreg, Ling Chen. She's only a victim. The person she hated in her heart would only be one person, Ling Chen. Even if Sha Chu had obtained Ling Chen's heart, Hong Luan did not hate her. The reason was that Hong Luan had believed from the start that she was only a pitiful person. After a long time, a lady walked in as the waiter led her in. The lady was dressed in a green dress with a violet belt fastened on her waist. Her head of black hair flowed slightly along with the wind as she walked, and her posture was elegant. After stepping into the cabin, she raised her head and it was at that moment that Yun Luo Feng clearly saw her appearance. Even though she was beautiful, she couldn't be compared to Hong Luan's alluring and magnificent style. Yet it was irrefutable that her gentleness and beauty could cause countless men to be moved. Her beautiful eyes faintly contained tears while her gentle expression seemed pale. Her pitiful expression would arouse one to feel tenderness towards her. Chapter 1333, Feigning Illness 3. However, Yun Luo Feng had met plenty of women who would arouse others' tender feelings. Compared to such a woman, she preferred someone domineering like Hong Luan. At the very least, Hong Luan was true to herself and would never use such a pitiful appearance to attract others' attention. Putong. Xiao did not say a single word and knelt before Hong Luan. Her eyes glittered with tears as she implored, "Miss Hong Luan, everything is my fault and I shouldn't have snatched young Master Ling Chen away. Actually, the person he wants to marry is you, so please give him another chance, I beg of you." There were customers currently walking to and fro outside the cabin, and after hearing Xiao's words, they couldn't help but stop in their tracks and fix their attention on the scene. Hong Luan's expression gradually turned cool. "Frankly speaking, I pitied you in the past, as after all, you are a victim of Ling Chen, but he's unable to marry you. However, as of now, I will no longer pity you. Isn't there this saying, a pathetic person will certainly have something that makes other people despise them?" Xiao stared blankly and she tightly bit on her lips. "Miss Hong Luan, young Master Ling Chen still has you in his heart, and if you do not wish to see me, I can disappear and no longer appear before young Master Ling Chen. I only beg of you to give him another opportunity." Hong Luan narrowed her eyes and flames of fury gradually surfaced in her beautiful eyes. Just as she wanted to get angry, a hand suddenly landed on her back while a bewitching voice sounded in her ears. "I've said that I'll deal with these two people for you." Hong Luan stared blankly. Taking a look at young Luo Feng, she chose to retreat. Xiao raised her head and her vision slowly focused on the young man's handsome face. In an instant, her heart seemed to have begun fiercely beating and she blushed. It was no wonder Hong Luan would disdain and treat Ling Chen with contempt. As it turned out, she had seduced an extremely handsome young man. It was a pity for such a handsome young man to follow alongside this vixen Hong Luan. Young Luo Feng lightly stroked her chin and revealed a fake smile as she looked towards Xiao, who was kneeling on the ground. "Asking Hong Luan to marry Ling Chen, was it due to your own selfish motives or because you were truly being considerate for Ling Chen?" Xiao's gaze was earnest and sincere. "Everything I've done is all for young Master Ling Chen. As long as Miss Hong Luan is willing to marry him, I can leave here without asking for anything and not meet him in the future." "Alright, if that's the case, then you can leave here and not meet him in the future," young Luo Feng nodded her head and said in all seriousness. Xiao's expression changed instantly. Her hands had tightly clenched tight to restrain her internal anger at this injustice. On what basis? Just because her background couldn't be compared to Hong Luan, she had to suffer such a grievance. Hong Luan merely got lucky during her reincarnation, and if Xiao was the young miss of the governor's estate, then Hong Luan would definitely be inferior to her in all aspects. "Young master, I do wish to leave young Master Ling Chen, but," Xiao loosened her fist and took out a handkerchief to wipe her tears, "young Master Ling Chen isn't willing to let me go." The smile on young Luo Feng became increasingly devilish and she looked towards everyone present. "Everyone, presumably you've all heard her clearly. She repeatedly mentioned that Hong Luan is unwilling to give Ling Chen an opportunity, yet now that Hong Luan is giving him a chance, she rejected it. In this case, Hong Luan cannot be blamed." Xiao lowered her eyes and hatred surfaced within. She merely casually mentioned it earlier on because she knew that Hong Luan despised Ling Chen for not being a virgin and would definitely reject her suggestion. By coming here she did not really intend to beg Hong Luan to accept Ling Chen. She only wanted to let Ling Chen know of her own determination so that Ling Chen would marry her without second thoughts even with the governor's objections. Chapter 1334. Feigning Illness 4. However, she didn't expect that this young man would actually agree on behalf of Hong Luan. The surrounding crowd also reacted due to young Luo Feng's words, and instantly they all looked at Xiao. "Miss, with your background, you are not deserving of young Master Ling Chen. Why don't you back off?" "That's right, what this young master said is correct. Earlier on, you said you intended to leave young Master Ling Chen so that they could get together. Right now you've been given the chance, so why are you unwilling to leave?" "Tisk tisk, aren't you asking the obvious? From the start, she didn't intend to leave and was merely putting on an act. How can such a woman have any right to be compared to Miss Hong Luan? If it was in other places, perhaps many would consider Xiao as pitiful and stand on her side. However, this was the East Province. Although Hong Luan's personality was domineering, she was also very protective of her own. As long as they were the East Province's citizens, she would not be miserly in extending her own assistance as long as one was in a difficult situation. It was also because of this that within the East Province she had received the love and respect of the common people. Therefore, Xiao wanting to lead the public opinion around was a good move yet found the wrong location. Why? Xiao stood up from the ground. Her footsteps staggered and tears flowed from her pale face. Just because my background isn't strong enough, so I have to receive your criticisms and not even have the right to be together with my beloved. Don't tell me falling in love with someone is also wrong. Young Luo Feng crossed her arms and cast a sideways glance at Xiao. First, you were the one who said you wanted to leave and no one forced you. Second, since you're deeply in love with Ling Chen, you can just be together with him, yet now you're here to disturb Hong Luan. Aren't you shooting yourself in the foot? Xiao's body shivered. I only wanted to help young Master Ling Chen. Alright, then I will give you another opportunity. If you can kneel here for 5 days and nights, perhaps I might consider giving Hong Luan to him. Young Luo Feng pulled on Hong Luan's hands and walked out. Let's go. Having had the atmosphere spoiled by someone, I do not have the mood to continue staying. The moment she walked past Xiao, her footsteps paused and she spoke in a low tone, I will not let anyone harm Hong Luan, so. If you wish to court death, I won't mind killing you. After throwing her these words, the white-robed young man had already cut through the crowd and disappeared from Xiao's line of sight. On the bustling street, Hong Luan struggled free of young Luo Feng's hand and stopped. Raising her head, she looked at young Luo Feng. Earlier on, thank you. If it were up to her, she would definitely take action after being provoked by Xiao. However, young Luo Feng was different. Even if she didn't take action, she could let Xiao be totally refuted, and cause Xiao, who was originally in an advantageous position, to immediately fall into a disadvantage. Young Luo Feng turned and looked at the red-robed lady. Hong Luan, in order to enter the governor's estate, Xiao will definitely kneel in the restaurant for 5 days and nights. At that time, send someone to monitor her. In addition, you have to be prepared to be reproached by Ling Chen. Hong Luan smiled. In the past, I had fallen for Ling Chen, but afterward I realized that I was blind. Words from that bastard can no longer affect me in the slightest, and in addition. Her voice paused and she continued speaking, what you've done was right. Ling Chen is deeply in love with Xiao and if I force Xiao to kneel for 5 days and nights, he will definitely fly into a rage. In the future, I can also break away from his pestering. Hong Luan sighed and her voice was somewhat sentimental. They who were once childhood friends, how did they end up having a falling out to this extent? Chapter 1335, Feigning Illness 5. Young Luo Feng was taciturn for a while before saying, Hong Luan, today Ling Chen came looking for you but left due to an emergency. I asked around and rumor has it that Xiao's old illness had relapsed, so he hastily left. However, I checked Xiao's body and her physique is so weak because she has consumed a herb called Rosin flower. Rosin flower? Hong Luan was startled. What is this Rosin flower? A herb that can cause symptoms of debility. That is to say, she has purposely consumed Rosin flower and faked her sickness to deceive Ling Chen into returning. Other than that, there's no problem with her body. I would like to ask, when you and Ling Chen met each other back then, did Xiao frequently use this excuse to get him to return? Hong Luan turned silent and nodded her head after a long time. Indeed, a few years ago, Ling Chen had coincidentally saved Xiao and both of them secretly bore feelings for each other. In addition, Xiao had gotten pregnant before marriage. Ling Chen originally wanted to take her in as a concubine but the governor had always opposed it and even put him under house arrest, resulting in Xiao having a miscarriage due to sorrow. From then on, she had symptoms of debility and because of this, Ling Chen felt guilty towards her and always believed that he had harmed her. After saying this, she raised her beautiful eyes and looked at young Luo Feng with all seriousness. Therefore, you mentioned that there's nothing wrong with her body. Is that true? I can confirm that there's no problem with her body. Young Luo Feng's words caused Hong Luan's heart to tremble. She who was originally sympathetic towards Xiao had transferred her sympathy to Ling Chen. So it turns out, Ling Chen was a fool to have been deceived by that woman. This woman is sure scheming, knowing that after losing her child she would be unable to enter the North Governor's estate. She feigned sickness so that Ling Chen would feel guilt towards her. Young Luo Feng stroked her chin. Hong Luan, this Rosin flower isn't some mysterious herb. Were there no physicians in the governor's estate who examined her? Hong Luan shook her head. At that time, Ling Chen felt extremely guilty and wanted the governor's estate's physicians to examine and treat her. However, she rejected it with all her might, claiming that her status was lowly and she didn't deserve for those noble physicians to examine her. In addition, if she relied on the governor's estate's influence, the governor would definitely oppose her entering the family. As such, Ling Chen felt incomparably touched, wishing he could embrace tightly the love Xia Chu had for him. Now I finally know why Ling Chen did not choose you, young Luo Feng blinked, because you would never act pitiful like Xia Chu and pick words that others like to hear. However, one day, someone who appreciates your frank personality will appear. It was because Hongluan was too frank which resulted in her being in a disadvantageous situation when contesting against Xia Chu. Nonetheless, young Luo Feng was fond of her personality and she felt very relaxed while being by her side. What you say is right, Hongluan quirked her brow and smiled. How could it be that I, Hongluan, can't find an outstanding man? Who does Ling Chen think he is and why do I have to feel wrong because of him? Since he's fond of a fake woman like Xia Chu, then I shall give him my best wishes. Young Luo Feng, let's go. There's someone I dislike in this restaurant, so let's find another restaurant. A smile like a rose blossomed on Hongluan's face as she tightly pulled on young Luo Feng's hand and walked to another restaurant with quick steps. Only after arriving at the restaurant did young Luo Feng understand what being rich was like. Chapter 1336, Feigning Illness 6. Within this East Province, Hongluan had reserved a cabin in all restaurants, just because she did not want to use something that someone else had used before. After all the dishes were served, it could be even said that the food smelled good, looked good, and tasted great, yet Hongluan saw that young Luo Feng didn't move her chopsticks, so she asked. Are the dishes of this restaurant not to your liking? Young Luo Feng ate a mouthful of food and shook her head. No, I was just longing for someone else's food. During this period after leaving Yun Xiao, she was still unaccustomed to outside food. Of course, if it were someone else who had tasted Yun Xiao's cooking, they would probably be unable to eat any of this food. The difference between them was like heaven and earth. By the way, where has Hu Li gone to? Young Luo Feng lowered the chopsticks in her hands. He's not far from me, and he won't be appearing by my side for the time being. Before she clarified Wu's identity, she would not allow him to approach her, and Hu Li was sent to monitor him. You suspect that child's identity yet you sent Hu Li to monitor him, aren't you afraid that Hu Li might encounter danger? Hongluan curiously questioned. Young Luo Feng smiled. If there's a problem with this child, his objective would be me. Therefore, he would not inadvertently alert an enemy by harming Hu Li. This was also the reason she had been at ease, allowing Hu Li to be alone with him. After young Luo Feng and Hongluan returned to the governor's estate, the skies had turned dark. Just as they stepped through the gates, a breeze-like figure rushed from behind her. Hongluan. Ling Chen's tone was furious as he hastily dashed towards Hongluan. His tightly clenched fist crackled and his eyes were thoroughly red. Why did you do that? Why did you punish Chuer in such a way? She merely went to find you because of me, yet you had the heart to be so ruthless towards such a kind-hearted woman like her. Ling Chen was angered to the point his body trembled. Right now, I want you to beg Chuer to stand up. When I forced her to, she threatened me saying that she would commit suicide and dared not stand without your orders. Follow me immediately to beg her to stand. The words he used were not to ask, but to beg. Just as Ling Chen grabbed Hongluan's arm to drag her forcefully, Hongluan's expression turned chilly as she ruthlessly flung his hands away. Fenger has said, if she were to kneel for 5 days and night, Fenger would consider giving me to you. However, I did not force her to kneel, and this was her own choice, so it's unrelated to me. At that time, young Luo Feng only said she would consider and did not use an exact wording. Even if Chu Xia indeed knelt for 5 days and nights, young Luo Feng would never hand Hongluan over to Ling Chen. Ling Chen raised his hands, and a palm fiercely struck towards Hongluan. Just as his palms were about to land on Hongluan's face, she raised her hands and tightly grasped his wrists. Ling Chen, this is the end of our friendship. Between us, we do not owe each other anything else. Hongluan suddenly used force, causing Ling Chen to retreat. He touched his wrists that had turned blue-black and looked up at the red-robed lady who gradually disappeared from his sight. He didn't know why, but looking at the woman's heartless appearance, he momentarily felt his heart feeling empty. Even Ling Chen himself did not know where this feeling came from. Eldest young miss. Suddenly, a bodyguard walked out and cupped his fists towards Hong Luan as he said respectfully, "Eldest young miss, the governor invites you and young master Yun over." "Father is looking for me." Hong Luan stared blankly. She then turned towards Yun Luofeng and asked, "If you are willing to follow me, then we'll head there right now. If you are unwilling, no one can force you." Chapter 1337. Spirit Province's Jun Family 1. "Let's go together." Yun Luofeng shrugged her shoulders. Since the governor invited her and Hong Luan, what harm was there in making this trip? Hong Luan did not speak any further, but she had made a firm resolution. If her father were to make things difficult for Yun Luofeng, she would disregard everything and stand by her side. This was what she had promised Yun Luofeng. A promise must be kept and by no means could it be broken. The atmosphere within the study room was tense as the middle-aged man stood with his hands behind his back. His back faced the door and radiated an eminent and unapproachable aura. This was also the second time Yun Luofeng had seen the governor, Hong Ling, all-powerful within the East Province and a figure above every man. Seemingly sensing their arrival, Hong Ling slowly turned around. At this moment, he was not as overbearing as before, while his expression revealed his helplessness and he heavily sighed. "Luoner, are you truly unwilling to marry Ling Chen?" The moment Hong Luan returned to the governor's estate, he was fuming with anger so he couldn't restrain himself and berated her. Now that he had calmed down, in order not to force his daughter to leave, he could only suppress his internal rage and reveal the helpless expression as he questioned her. Hearing his words, Hong Luan seriously nodded, "Yes, I will not marry Ling Chen." "Luoner, the 7-province continent will go through enormous changes from now on, and if you were married to Ling Chen, only with an alliance between the 2 provinces will we be able to continue to survive among the 7 provinces. Hong Ling's expression gradually turned solemn, "Otherwise, the East Province will definitely be destroyed by then." Hong Luan sneered, "Father, you're sending your daughter to connect by marriage just so the East Province will continue to survive in the future when huge changes occur in the 7-province continent. It's fine if it were someone else, but I, Hong Luan, will never use my marriage to ask for peace." 7 provinces huge change. After hearing these words, Yun Luofeng secretly took note while she stood alongside Hong Luan all along without commenting. "Luoner." Hong Ling's face revealed anger. "You're only a woman and no matter how strong you are, how can you rely on your sole strength to support the entire East Province? I only have you as my daughter and if you do not marry Ling Chen, how am I supposed to die without concern?" Hong Luan did not expect that her own father would be so stubborn and her expression also turned chillier. "I've mentioned this before, with my strength, I do not require the North Province's assistance. There will be one day that I'll be able to use my own strength and let the East Province stand at the peak of the 7-province continent and will never be forgotten." "Forget it." This expert who had shocked the world was full of helplessness now when facing his own daughter who was currently in her rebellious period. He was well aware of his own daughter's temper. She would never turn back on something that she had decided. "Luoner, if you do not suffer a setback, you will never turn back. Your father is also helpless in dealing with you." Hong Luan bitterly smiled. Even though he was stern with his daughter, but in any case, she was his only daughter and could it be that he had to tie her up on the marriage sedan? "I will not interfere in your affairs in the future. Besides, the matters between you and Ling Chen have to be settled by you personally. In a few days, the North Province's governor will personally visit to withdraw the marriage. Have you thought about how you are going to decline tactfully?" "Tactfully decline? Why should I do that?" Hong Luan coldly chuckled. "I said I wouldn't be marrying and that's that. Even if the emperor were to arrive, I would also refuse to marry." Hong Luan shook his head helplessly and only then did he shift his line of sight to Yun Luofeng. Currently, perhaps Yun Luofeng felt that the father and daughter discussion was boring, so she had casually pulled up a chair and sat down. Her body lazily leaned against the chair while her wicked eyes revealed an attitude of looking down on the world. Chapter 1338. Spirit Province's Jun Family 2. However, Yun Luofeng's haughty attitude caused Hong Ling to feel dissatisfied, and his expression darkened. The first time they met, as Yun Luofeng and Hong Luan did not stop by for long, and he did not have the chance to size up Yun Luofeng carefully. Only now was he able to carefully look at Yun Luofeng from head to toe. However, A piece of jade pendant hung on the young man's waist entered his line of sight. A Jun character was clearly carved on the jade pendant, causing his eyes to narrow. You are from the Spirit Province's Jun family. Spirit Province's Jun family. Young Luo Feng stared blankly. Her line of sight gradually fell on the jade pendant hung on her robe as suspicion surfaced in her eyes. This jade pendant was given to her by Jun Fengling. Could it be that there was a problem with it? What Spirit Province's Jun family? Young Luo Feng's brows quirked as she asked. The Spirit Province's governor's surname is Jun. Hong Ling carefully stared at young Luo Feng. Tell me, where did you obtain this jade pendant? Young Luo Feng lightly stroked the jade pendant and faintly smiled. It's an item my mother had since she was young. Is there a problem? Jun Fengling was Yun Xiao's mother and was also naturally her mother too. With her current appearance, she could not say that it was gifted to her by her mother-in-law, so she had addressed Jun Fengling as her mother. Hong Ling's eyes shrunk and instantly recovered. If you wish to know the origins of the jade pendant, you can make a trip to the Jun family in the Spirit Province, and the answer you're looking for is there. Besides, the Jun family has offended a large number of enemies, and I'd advise you to remove this pendant to prevent being discovered by their enemies. Young Luo Feng's eyes narrowed and stayed silent for a long time. Spirit Province's Jun family. It seems like after locating Yun Xiao she would have to make a trip to the Spirit Province to seek for an answer. After young Luo Feng left the study room, Hong Luan seemed to notice that her father had something to say and so stayed behind. Father, exactly what's with the Jun family you speak of? Hong Luan sighed. Several years ago, the Jun family's lord offended the previous governor of the Spirit Province and was chased by countless experts. At that time, his wife had been killed by the previous governor, and to protect his daughter who was in her infancy, the lord had no alternative but to gift her to an old friend. After that, the Jun family's lord sought revenge from the previous governor and also exterminated the governor's entire estate. As a result, the lord assumed the position of governor in Spirit Province. Yet, the lord did not leave the Jun family, and so, when others mention the Spirit Province governor's estate, it can also be called the Spirit Province's Jun family. However, he has become the right and proper governor of the Spirit Province. All these years, the lord still remembers his deceased wife and has remained a bachelor. Furthermore, he has been searching for the whereabouts of his daughter all these years, but not to mention his daughter, even that old friend disappeared without a trace. Therefore, the Jun family's missing daughter has become the most enigmatic problem. Now with the Jun family's jade pendant appearing in young Luo Feng hands, could it be that her mother was the Jun family lord's daughter? Hong Luan was somewhat astonished, seemingly never having thought that young Luo Feng would have such an identity. She was silent for a moment before asking, "Are you sure young Luo Feng's mother is the Jun family's daughter? Could that jade pendant be from someone else of the Jun family?" Hong Luan shook his head. The Jun character on that jade pendant was carved using a special method. In particular, this jade pendant can resist one killing attack from an expert. Do you think an ordinary person from the Jun family can possess such a jade pendant? Hong Luan blinked her eyes. Father, do we need to inform the Jun family of this matter? Chapter 1339, Spirit Province's Jun Family 3. In fact, Hong Luan wanting to inform the Jun family was not only for young Luo Feng to be safe. More importantly, she admired the Jun family's lord. This lord's wife had passed away many years ago, yet he had still insisted on his feelings and did not remarry. After he had taken revenge, he wholeheartedly searched for his daughter for dozens of years, but it was as though just one day had passed and he had not abandoned hope even now. How could she not be touched by such a spirit? Without a doubt, this jade pendant should have originated from the Jun family's lord. However, whether young Luo Feng's mother is the eldest young miss of the Jun family still requires some verification. Furthermore, the Jun family's lord left the Spirit Province after passing the family position to his disciple. Even till today, his whereabouts are still unknown and locating him is easier said than done. Hong Ling shook his head and helplessly sighed. The Jun family's lord was always traveling throughout the various provinces, and even the Jun family was unaware of his specific location. He had only brought along the daughter of his disciple by his side, and searching for him was just like finding a needle in a haystack. Father, why don't we inform the Jun family? I'm sure they have the means to locate the lord. Hong Luan's expression was determined. If young Luo Feng had the Jun family as her backing, she would be able to travel around the 7 provinces without fear, and who would dare to humiliate her? Okay. Hong Ling's eyes flickered. Hong Luan, you should build up good relations with young Luo Feng during this period. If he's the son of the Jun family's eldest young miss, it's fine if you are connected to young Luo Feng by marriage. The more Hong Ling spoke, the more excited he was. The Spirit Province was one of the front-ranking among the 7 provinces, and if they could be related with the Jun family by marriage, it was much better compared to the North Province. However, before he had calmed down his excited emotions, Hong Luan doused him with a pot of cold water. First, my relationship with young Luo Feng is already good. Secondly, the Jun family is the Jun family, and young Luo Feng is young Luo Feng. No matter if he's really from the Jun family, he's someone I have acknowledged. I'm different from you. You place too much importance on power, but in my eyes, power cannot be compared to friendship. If one is overly obsessed with pursuing power, how much can they achieve in their life? Being lectured by his daughter resulted in Hong Ling's expression becoming even paler as flames of anger rushed to his head. Father, we are cultivators, and originally, cultivators do as they please. Too many distracting thoughts will make it hard for us to advance forth. If you insist on me being the same as you, then I would rather not want this governor position. I believe that with my strength, I can reach the summit of this continent. Hong Luan had always disapproved of Hong Ling pursuing power and influence. In her opinion, one should do as they please. Regardless if young Luo Feng was from the Jun family, she was a friend she had acknowledged for her lifetime, without change. The reason why she had regarded young Luo Feng of such importance was most probably because of the previous fight in the restaurant. This fight had caused her to cherish young Luo Feng, and after hanging out together these days, she understood that they were the same type of person. Furthermore, in that fight, she and young Luo Feng were equally matched, and her objective was to be able to defeat her one day. Luoner, you, Hong Ling slammed the table and stood up while meeting her with glaring eyes. Hong Luan remained unmoved and smiled. Father, if young Luo Feng is someone from the Jun family, I will not draw support from the Jun family just because you want me to, and even if he's not from the Jun family, he's still the only person I call as my friend in this life. Those people whom she had met in the past were all people who curried favor due to the governor's estate's influence, and only young Luo Feng could become her true friend. Chapter 1340. Spirit Province's Jun Family 4. Hong Ling was extremely furious as his palm suddenly slammed on the table and smashed it into pieces. Yet, Hong Luan turned to leave without caring about Hong Ling's anger in the slightest. This girl is too rebellious to dare to speak to her father in this way and lecture me. Hong Ling overflowed with anger. Without power, how can one stand at the peak? How can one rely on their strength to stand at this position? If it weren't because the governor's estate provided her with the conditions to cultivate, how could she have become so strong? Hong Ling became even angrier as he thought about it. He had never believed that a person of low status could rely on their strength to reach the summit, and even more, he did not believe one could be powerful without a family's nurturing. It was impossible for a phoenix to emerge from a mountain village, and a phoenix could only surface by using countless precious ingredients and treasures. Forget it, I'll take my hands off you in the future, and you can do whatever you please. Expending all my might, wanting to be connected by marriage with the North Province and thinking of obtaining the Jun family's assistance, wasn't it all for you? However, you are not the slightest bit grateful towards me for all I've done, and your obstinate attitude is the same as your mother. I must have owed both of you too much in my previous life. Hong Ling sighed heavily and sat down. Currently, the expert that inspired awe throughout the province was just like a normal helpless father facing a daughter in her rebellious phase, and he could only allow her to make her own life decisions. After Hong Luan left the study room, it was evident that she was exhausted. Just as she pushed the door open, she suddenly noticed the white-robed young man seated in her room sipping tea. Young Luo Feng, Hong Luan stared blankly, why are you in my room? Young Luo Feng placed the teacup down, raised her head and looked at Hong Luan. What's with the huge changes in the 7 provinces? Hong Luan walked in and poured a cup of tea, seemingly minding her own business. She lightly sipped her tea before placing the teacup down. The 7 provinces' huge changes had happened once before 1,000 years ago. Hong Luan looked at young Luo Feng. Do you know that the underground of the 7 provinces continent is suppressing a terrifying existence? These existences awaken once every 1,000 years, and when they awaken, it is a calamity of the entire continent. However, no one is clear about the exact timing when they will awaken. My father is afraid that he will be on his deathbed at that time and I will not be able to deal with those existences. So, he thought to connect with the North Province via marriage, hoping to rely on their influence to help us. Young Luo Feng frowned. It was the first time she had heard all of this information. Actually, I know that my father has my best interests at heart, but I'm unwilling to comply with his orders. I do not believe that I'm unable to fight against those existences with my strength. Hong Luan laughed and explained. Young Luo Feng lifted her brow. It doesn't seem like there are just these conflicting views between you and your father. Hong Luan was surprised and helplessly revealed the truth. You noticed it. It's because he caused my mother's death, so I haven't had any good feelings for him since I was young. Your mother? That's right, my mother's personality was resolute and upright. Her temper was even more explosive than mine, and she was also powerful. That year, this East Province had been conquered by her and my father together. However, to make the hearts of those powerful subordinates follow my father and not betray him, he decided to take in their daughters as his concubines. How could a person like my mother allow a man to have 3 wives and 4 concubines? Because of that, she left my father in a fit of anger. To prove to my father that he did not need to rely on marriages to strengthen their influence, she attempted a forced breakthrough, resulting in her death by an explosion with her soul dispersing. Chapter 1341. Spirit Provinces Jun Family 5. If a human dies, they can still be reincarnated, but if one's soul disperses, then it meant that they had disappeared from this world. Hong Luan sneered. I was young and immature back then, so my memories of her aren't especially clear. However, she was still my mother, so how could I not hate him? Sometimes, I wish that I didn't have him as my father. Young Luo Feng sipped her tea and continued listening to Hong Luan's story. Perhaps it's retribution. My father has had countless concubines all these years, but none was able to conceive an heir. Hong Luan's smile became increasingly chilly. Young Luo Feng, why are men so ruthless? They conquered this place together with my mother, but he started taking in concubines in a blink of an eye after obtaining this land. For men, is power and influence so important? In this instant, a handsome yet grim expression surfaced in young Luo Feng's mind and she faintly smiled. If he loves you, he'll naturally be willing to abandon the world for you. If he's not sincere, then you're not as important as the world in his eyes. That year when meeting Yun Xiao, she was only a trash with a bad reputation, yet he was the ghost emperor that was set up high above. For her, he had willingly set aside his position and become the man behind her. If she were to request it of him, then that man would definitely obtain the whole world for her. In this life, what other desires would she have when she had such a husband? Young Luo Feng, I told my father that if he continues forcing me, I don't mind giving up the governor's estate. But in reality, I was only scaring him. I am his only daughter and who else could he pass the position to? Although I do not place importance on power, I must obtain this governor's estate. Hong Luan's gaze became resolute. The reason is that a portion of this East Province belongs to my mother and I will never let others take advantage of it. Such a joke. How could she possibly give up the East Province? For her mother, she would never give the East Province to someone else. I have faith in your strength. Young Luo Feng smiled. With Hong Luan's abilities, she would indeed be able to make it big in the future, yet it was unknown if there would be a man capable of moving her emotionally. No matter what, Ling Chen was no longer one of her choices. A servant maid pushed open the door and entered while hastily reporting, "Miss, young Master Ling Chen is still outside, unwilling to leave." Ignore him, Hong Luan sneered, since he likes to wait, let him be. I'd like to see how long he can wait. According to Ling Chen's temperament, he will leave within 6 hours. Hong Luan had thought too highly of Ling Chen. Not to mention 6 hours, he did not even wait for 2 hours before he hastily left towards the restaurant to persuade Chu Xia. However, Xia Chu had made a firm resolution that she would not stand up before the 5 days were up. For this reason, the hatred Ling Chen had towards Hong Luan had increased a few levels, and the emptiness in his heart he previously felt had long been forgotten. Hong Luan, just you wait. By treating Xia Chu in this manner, I will let you repay this debt another day 1,000-fold. Ling Chen said while overflowing with hatred. Currently, Ling Chen, who was overflowing with anger, did not notice in the slightest that a trace of smug and sinister emotion flashed through Xia Qi's eyes. Hong Luan, your personality is too overbearing and unreasonable. No man would ever fancy a woman like you. As long as I slightly scheme, even that peerless white-robed young man beside you will become mine. At this moment, young Luo Feng's arrogant and confident appearance surfaced in Xia Qi's mind while her eyes revealed infatuation. It was the first time she had ever met such an exceptional young man. Chapter 1342, Spirit Province's Jun Family, 6. Ling Chen, who was originally uncomparably handsome in her eyes, was like dung when compared to that young master. He was similar to an immortal who was detached from the mortal life, and even a glance from him could cause one's heart to beat frantically. The only unfortunate thing was that his background couldn't be compared to Ling Chen, and precisely due to this, she had suppressed her impulse that day. However, if she could enjoy one night with the young man, she would be satisfied. As for the disdain young Luo Feng had towards her while protecting Hong Luan, it was not important, since in her opinion no man could resist a woman who was tender and soft as water. Unfortunately, Xia Qi did not know that young Luo Feng was a woman, causing her to do something that she would regret for the rest of her life. 5 days later, within the restaurant that was bustling with activity, the crowd had long dispersed. Ling Chen helped Xia Qi up while feeling heartache, and he gnashed his teeth in anger. "Chuer, you can rest assured that after I've married Hong Luan, I'll let you deal with her." Xia Qi lowered her head, and her head of black hair covered her pale complexion. "Young Master Ling Chen, I've accomplished the task Miss Hong Luan entrusted to me, and I'll follow along with you to meet her. Besides, I wish to have a conversation with young Master Yun, in the hope that he will fulfill his promise and give Miss Hong Luan to you." "No," Ling Chen hastily pulled Xia Qi's hands, "how can I be at ease with you looking for that bastard? You're so beautiful, and what if he harbors bad intentions and bullies you?" Xia Qi revealed a miserable smile. "Young master, if he really intends to commit beastly actions towards me, then it'll let Miss Hong Luan know his true colors. Wouldn't that be much better?" "I do not agree to this. I shall settle this matter, Chuer, and it's best if you're not involved." Ling Chen frowned and spoke. Xia Qi was his woman, so how could he possibly allow his own woman to meet with an unknown man? Therefore, he would never agree to her suggestion. "Young master, if you were to look for him, you'll be meeting as rivals in love. How could he possibly give Miss Hong Luan to you?" Xia Qi shook her head. "Actually, that day he said that if I were to kneel for 5 days and nights, he would consider giving Hong Luan to you, and he did not give a certain answer." Ling Chen's heart trembled. "Then why were you willing to suffer for 5 days and nights?" "Young master, if it's for you, I will not give up as long as there's a gleam of hope." Xia Qi tightly bit on her lips and continued, "Furthermore, it'll be the best if I were to persuade young Master Yun to surrender. However, I would require you to pester Hong Luan during that period, or otherwise, with her temperament, she'll definitely forbid young Master Yun from doing so." "Chuer." Ling Chen tightly held Xia Qi in his embrace. "You've done too much for me. What good have I done in my life to deserve such a kind-hearted and virtuous woman like you?" Xia Qi burrowed her head on Ling Chen's chest, so he was unable to see her expression. "You are the love of my life, and for you, I have nothing to fear, even I have to enter the depths of hell." Xia Qi raised her head and stared at Ling Chen with tears twinkling in her eyes. "Young master, you can rest assured. Since Chuer has decided to follow you, Chuer will definitely keep myself pure, and if that young man truly intends to molest Chuer, I will not let him have his way." Ling Chen was silent for quite a while before answering. "All right, I'll send someone to protect you in secret." Xia Qi's eyes twinkled. "Young master, let your subordinate maintain a distance away from me, or otherwise he will be discovered. If he were to discover your subordinates, he would definitely be unwilling to let go of Miss Hong Luan. For you, Chuer is willing to take a gamble." Chapter 1343, Unrivaled in Being Shameless 1. In the west garden of the governor's estate, just as Hong Luan intended to look for young Luo Feng, a figure suddenly appeared and blocked her path. She furrowed her brows. "Who let you in?" Whenever Ling Chen recalled everything Hong Luan had done to Xia Qi, he felt suffocating anger within. However, thinking of his motive coming to the governor's estate today, he forcefully suppressed his rage. "Hong Luan, I'm not here to pester you or find trouble. I want to talk to you." In any case, he had already dispatched his subordinates to follow Xia Qi secretly, and he figured that young Master Yun would be incapable of committing any immoral acts. What is there to discuss between us? Hong Luan sneered, moving sideways as she intended to leave by walking around Ling Chen. Ling Chen hastily moved and continued to block her way. Get lost. Hong Luan's expression was cold as she sternly shouted. Looking at Hong Luan, he said, Hong Luan, you would never talk to me like this in the past, and at the same time, you never would have harmed an innocent woman due to jealousy. You've changed to become vicious, ruthless, and incomparably cruel. Is everything all because of that guy? Hearing his words, Hong Luan laughed, and her laughter was filled with sarcasm. That's only because you didn't understand me. Ling Chen, I'll give you another chance, get out of my estate. From today onward, both of us are like strangers, without any entanglement. Hong Luan, seeing that Hong Luan was about to turn and leave, Ling Chen hastily called out, are you truly disregarding our past friendship? Hong Luan stopped, and a trace of confusion surfaced in her heart. In the past, Ling Chen would definitely fly into a rage after she treated Xia Qi like that. However, at this moment, there were no traces of him being angry at her treatment of Xia Qi. Instead, all the signs seemed to be indicating that he did not wish for her to leave. Why was that? Miss. A servant maid hurriedly ran over and softly whispered in Hong Luan's ear. Hearing her words, Hong Luan's eyes revealed a glint as she looked at Ling Chen oddly. Ling Chen initially thought that Hong Luan would not stay, but she was actually not in a rush after the servant maid whispered something to her. The smile on her lips revealed sinister intent and her phoenix eyes were brimming with amusement. You said you wanted to talk with me. Hong Luan looked at Ling Chen with a fake smile. Sure, I'll have a good talk with you right now. Seeing Hong Luan changing her mind, Ling Chen faintly felt unease in his heart, but he was unsure what had caused the unease. Could it be that Hong Luan is aware that Chuer went looking for young Luo Feng? No. That was impossible. With Hong Luan's personality, if she found out that another woman went to look for her man, she would definitely aggressively rush there. Therefore, perhaps Hong Luan was honestly willing to have a chat with him. Ling Chen smiled. As long as he could hold her up, Chuer would have a chance to convince young Luo Feng to give up on Hong Luan. Within the room, young Luo Feng was seated upright on the chair. Her eyes faintly twitched as she heard the sound of footsteps outside. The door was pushed open by a pair of lily-white hands, and soon after, a beauty in green dress appeared in her room. At this moment, the lady's eyes were twinkling with tears as her expression of weakness and helplessness gazed at young Luo Feng. Young Luo Feng sipped her tea and asked indifferently, Ling Chen brought you in. Xia Qi bit on her lips. Young master left me alone due to Miss Hong Luan, and I did not intentionally intrude here. I wasn't aware that this was young Master Yun's place of residence and I ask the young master to forgive my rashness. Chapter 1344. Unrivaled in being shameless too. Ling Chen went to look for Hong Luan. Young Luo Feng quirked her brow and asked. Xia Qi nodded, they are currently taking a stroll hand in hand. I felt unnecessary, so I left. It was reasonable to say that after a man heard that his own woman was taking a stroll hand in hand with another man, they would definitely be jealous. Instead, young Luo Feng was still elegantly playing with the teacup while an absent-minded smile curled up on her peerless appearance. Xia Qi's eyes twinkled. Young Luo Feng's indifference towards Hong Luan meant that their relationship was superficial and perhaps she could stick her foot in. A long time later, young Luo Feng put the teacup down. If there's nothing else, you can leave. Young Master Yun. Suddenly, Xia Qi pounced onto young Luo Feng. She did not jump into his embrace but knelt on the ground before him instead. Young Master Yun, during our first encounter, only then did Xia Qi understand the meaning of a celestial being. Even if you are merciless towards Chuer, my heart belongs to you. Young Luo Feng lowered her eyes and her fingers lightly lifted Xia Qi's chin while revealing a faint smile. You mean, you're trying to seduce me? Xia Qi lowered her head in embarrassment. Chuer is not as mule-headed and unreasonable as Miss Hong. Chuer would be satisfied if I can wait upon young master for a night. Hong Luan was mule-headed and unreasonable. A ruthless glint streaked across young Luo Feng's eyes and she raised her leg, kicking Xia Qi flying with a bang. Xiao suddenly crashed against the wall, and she raised her eyes filled with astonishment and looked at young Luo Feng in disbelief. Facing a woman as gentle and tender like me, he was ruthless enough to attack me. From the start, Xiao thought that young Luo Feng coveted the governor's estate's power and so defended Hongluan in public. After all, who would be fond of a woman as unreasonable as Hongluan? However, she did not anticipate that young Luo Feng would attack her when Hongluan wasn't present. Young Luo Feng lazily leaned on her chair, and she fished out a handkerchief from her lapels, carefully wiping the finger that had touched Xiao's chin. Her expression and actions were just like Xiao was a germ that would infect her fingers. Since you're unwilling to accept me, don't blame me for being ruthless. Xiao's eyes twinkled and a cold glint streaked across. With a tearing sound, she tore her clothing in the chest area, revealing half of her bosom in a way that looked enticing. After that, she deliberately made a mess of her hair before she rushed out with a bang and loudly shouted, "Help! Someone is trying to molest me." Xiao's wailing cries were mournful, and her disheveled appearance made it easy for others to think they were real. The first one to appear was the subordinate Ling Chen sent to protect Xiao. Ling Chen had ordered him that if Xiao were to scream, he must appear before her at the first instance. Witnessing Xiao's disheveled appearance, he burned with anger. "Miss Xiao, please rest assured that my young master will definitely demand justice for you." Just as he was pacifying her, men from the governor's estate had also heard the commotion and arrived. The person leading in the front was the governor, Hong Ling, who appeared worn out from the journey. Shortly behind Hong Ling, Hong Luan and Ling Chen had also rushed over in succession. Seeing Ling Chen, Xiao rushed into his embrace with a cry and started crying loudly. "Chuer, what happened? Did that bastard molest you?" Seeing Xiao in his embrace, Ling Chen tightly clenched his fists, and his eyes seemed to spurt flames of fury. Chapter 1345, Unrivaled in Being Shameless 3. Chu Xia broke down in tears with half her chest revealed along with her scattered hair, making it impossible for one to avoid making assumptions about her encounter. "Young master," Xiao stopped her tears with great difficulty and raised her eyes that were blurred with tears, seemingly a weeping beauty. "You have to uphold justice for Chuer." Her words indirectly accused young Luo Feng of molesting her. "Good, very good." Ling Chen tightly gnashed his teeth, and everyone could even hear grinding sounds. "Hong Luan, so this is the kind of man you've found, a lecherous man. Not only is he lecherous, he even dared to molest Chuer. This kind of man is not worthy of Chuer." Hong Luan smirked and played with her hair. "Between me and Xiao, who is prettier?" Young Luo Feng giving Xiao furtive glances as a joke. "She cannot even be compared to a single finger of mine, so do you think she's worth Fenger to peep at?" Everyone in the governor's estate stared at Ling Chen with an unfriendly expression. If he dared to say that their young miss couldn't be compared to Xiao's beauty, they would definitely gather around and beat him until he was half dead before talking reason. Who cares if he's the young master of the North Province? He's not allowed to humiliate the eldest young miss no matter what. Ling Chen replied in anger, "Yes, you're indeed beautiful, but you're too unruly, unreasonable, and cause trouble without reason. How can you be compared to Chuer's gentleness? Besides, men are all insatiably greedy, and who would dare to swear that they would not think of having 3 wives and 4 concubines?" After speaking, Ling Chen turned towards Hong Ling, who was taciturn without speaking. "Uncle Hong, you have to give me an explanation." Hong Ling's dignified gaze swept towards the woman in Ling Chen's embrace and sternly said, "Who allowed this woman to step into the governor's estate?" He did not reply to Ling Chen's questioning but instead interrogated his men. "What do you think my governor's estate is? A place where a shady woman can enter?" Hong Ling's eyes burned with rage as his voice was imposing and domineering. "Ling Chen, I allowed you to take in concubines, but I did not say that you could bring your concubines to bully my daughter. Therefore, you can spare the address of Uncle Hong, as I don't have a nephew like you." Ling Chen's expression became ashen and pale while he gnashed his teeth. "Governor Hong, Ling, do you intend to shield young Luo Feng?" "HMPH, just a one-sided statement from her and you came to a judgment that young Luo Feng had molested her. On the contrary, I think that this woman has an ulterior motive and can't bear to see my daughter being happy, so she came to wreck this marriage predestined by fate." Hong Luan oddly turned towards Hong Ling. According to her own father's personality, He would definitely side with Ling Chen in this type of situation, as after all, Ling Chen was the young master of the North Province. He was a person who regarded power of importance and also placed importance on the relationship between various provinces, so how could he possibly berate Ling Chen for her? If it were because of Jun family's relations, it was still unlikely. It had yet to be confirmed that young Luo Feng was the son of the eldest young miss of Jun family, and he would never make a decision in a situation where he wasn't certain. Could it be, this guy had a change of personality? Young master. Chu Sha's tears flowed down like running water while her voice filled with grievance caused one to feel sorry for her. I'm sorry, it's all my fault. If it weren't for Chuer, you wouldn't have encountered such a situation. Originally, Chuer came looking for young Luo Feng with good intentions, thinking of asking him to give his blessings for you and Miss Hong Luan. However, who knew young Luo Feng was such a lecherous man? Sha Chu bit on her lips, lifting her head and looked at Ling Chen. However, young Luo Feng is the governor's estate's future son-in-law, and it's better that we let this go. I don't wish to implicate young master. Chuer can bear with such unfair treatment. Chapter 1346. Unrivaled in Being Shameless 4. At first, Ling Chen intended to leave the governor's estate as they were overwhelmed by numbers here and he would not benefit if they were to have a dispute with them. However, after hearing Sha Chu's grieving tone, the flames of fury in his heart surged forth once again. Taking a look, this was the woman he loved dearly, a woman who was beautiful, kind-hearted, and was still considerate of him at this moment. How could he display his weakness now? If he was unable to stick up for his own woman, wouldn't he be worthless as a man? Chuer, say no more. Today, I will definitely get justice for you. Ling Chen gnashed his teeth, and soon after, he raised his head while shouting towards the room, young Luo Feng, get out here. After he said that, a white-robed young man stepped out from the door. His white robes were similar to snow, and he looked peerlessly handsome like a celestial being that was set up on high. Who's barking outside? Who's barking outside? The young man's voice was not loud and instead revealed indifference, but anyone could detect the loftiness in his voice. What did barking mean? Only dogs bark. This darn bastard actually insulted him by calling him a dog. Ling Chen tightly clenched his fist. Young Luo Feng, how dare you molest my woman? You're too audacious, and no one can protect you today. Young Luo Feng lifted her brow and looked at the woman who was still in Ling Chen's embrace with a chilly smile. Do you think everyone's tastes are as ordinary as yours? Ling Chen was thoroughly angry. This darn bastard said that his tastes were too ordinary and he would never fancy a woman like Sha Chu. Young Master Yun, Hong Ling furrowed his brows and turned towards young Luo Feng. Could you explain what exactly had happened? Previously she turned up uninvited, told me that Hong Luan was strolling hand in hand with Ling Chen, and claimed that she wanted to spend a night with me. After that, I kicked her, but I do not know why she tore her clothing and ran out, young Luo Feng said indifferently. Hong Luan widened her eyes and furiously rebuked, when did I stroll hand in hand with him? You're brazenly lying. You're speaking nonsense. The moment Hong Luan furiously rebuked her, Sha Chu's voice sounded. Her body trembled from being furious as she angrily stared at young Luo Feng. My clothes were clearly torn by you. A lecherous man like you is not fit for Miss Hong Luan. She must have been deceived by you to have accepted you. One had to admit that Sha Chu's scheme was well thought out. She knew exactly how she should phrase her words to allow the governor's estate to side with her. As such, her words did not humiliate Hong Luan in the slightest and instead claimed that young Luo Feng had deceived Hong Luan. In this case, the governor's estate would definitely join hands with her and deal with young Luo Feng together. As expected, everyone in the estate except Hong Ling and Hong Luan was glaring at young Luo Feng with rage, as if she had committed some act that made the gods angry and the people resentful. Gucci. Hong Luan finally couldn't bear with it and laughed out loud. Ling Chen, previously my servant maid informed me that Sha Chu was sneakily entering young Luo Feng's room. Do you know why did I not stop her? Everyone also turned to look at Hong Luan in confusion and even Hong Ling did the same. He understood his own daughter's personality, which was very impulsive. If she knew about it beforehand, she would definitely rush over. Could it be that she wanted to test young Luo Feng? But looking at her expression, it did not seem so. Chapter 1347. Unrivaled in Being Shameless 5. What do you mean? Ling Chen's expression was somewhat stiff as he asked. Hong Luan's smile deepened. It's because I wanted to know what Xia Qi's scheme was. It seems that I thought too highly of her. To think that she could act out such childish ploy. She is befitting of the term, unrivaled in being shameless. Hong Luan, can't you see that it was young Luo Feng who bullied Chuer? Ling Chen's expression became increasingly unsightly. These matters clearly proved that Xia Qi had been taken advantage of, and Hong Luan still trusted in this man. Hong Luan did not heed Ling Chen and walked to young Luo Feng's side. There was a smile on her face as she said, "Young Luo Feng, thank you for your help. Now that my father is no longer forcing a marriage alliance, our objective has been achieved." What did she mean? Everyone blinked in shock. What did Hong Luan mean by achieving their objective? Just as everyone was in confusion, Hong Luan raised her hand and gently pulled on the headband that bound young Luo Feng's hair. Her full head of black hair scattered and covered her devastatingly beautiful appearance. Young Luo Feng then took out a bottle of medicinal liquid and gently smeared it on her throat. Her Adam's apple then dissolved, gradually disappearing before their eyes. The atmosphere became deathly still. No one spoke up as they were staring at young Luo Feng without blinking. Her Adam's apple disappeared. This young man was a woman. Hong Luan, my task is complete, and you will have to settle the aftermath. Her voice was not as low and hoarse as before, and instead, a melodious female voice sounded. Ling Chen was speechless. Xia Qi's expression turned deathly white, and a layer of cold sweat unknowingly surfaced on her forehead. She stood in front of Ling Chen while staring blankly and was not able to recover even after a long time. Young Luo Feng, you're a woman. The first one who recovered his senses was Hong Ling. Never in his wildest dreams would he have thought that the son-in-law he gradually acknowledged was a woman. Father, you've always been trying to force me to marry. I didn't want to marry Ling Chen, and so I asked young Luo Feng to disguise herself as a man and act as my partner. Hong Luan faintly quirked her brow. Luckily, you already agreed that I could make my own decisions in regards to my marriage, so there's no need for her to continue her disguise. Hong Ling took a deep breath, and his expression was odd. Luckily he had yet to inform the Jun family, otherwise, how could the lord of the Jun family locate his family member when his grandson turned into a granddaughter? Xia Qi, Hong Luan smiled and looked at Xia Qi, now you know why I did not obstruct you from entering young Luo Feng's room. I'd like to see how you're going to settle this mess. Chuer. Having heard what was said, Ling Chen reacted and ruthlessly pushed Xia Qi away from his embrace while questioning with a pale face, can you provide me with an explanation? Xia Qi's lips lightly trembled as despair gradually surfaced on her face. No matter what scenario she envisioned, she never expected that young Luo Feng was a woman. Hong Luan, young Luo Feng turned to her, are there any physicians in the governor's estate? Hong Luan suddenly reacted as she understood young Luo Feng's meaning and spoke to Hong Ling, Father, please find a physician to examine Xia Qi's body. Ling Chen, didn't you think that Xia Qi was gentle and kind and you were feeling guilty about things that happened to her in the past? Then I'll have to expose her true colors to your face. Chapter 1348. Unrivaled in Being Shameless 6. Unfortunately for you, I'm a narrow-minded person. Even though Hong Ling did not know of young Luo Feng's and Hong Luan's intentions, he still invited a physician. Soon after that, a physician with a head full of white hair appeared before Hong Ling. Examine her body, Hong Ling waved and said. I understand, Governor. The elderly man cupped his fists and slowly walked towards Xia Qi. No, I don't want that. Seeing that the elderly man was walking towards her, Xia Qi's expression changed drastically and she walked back step by step. Don't come any closer. Hong Luan looked at Xia Qi while beaming with a big smile. I heard that your miscarriage caused your body to be frail, so I invited a physician to examine you, but why are you acting this way? Could it be you have kept a secret hidden? Only at this moment did Xia Qi understand that she would never be Hong Luan's opponent in her entire life. Looking at the elderly man walking closer, she panicked, and her robes were soaked in sweat while a look of despair was on her face. No matter how foolish Ling Chen was, at this moment he had noticed that something was wrong. His expression turned cold, without the slightest hint of his previous tenderness. Xia Qi, let him examine you. Xia Qi shivered. It was also at this instant that the elderly man touched Xia Qi's wrist. After a long time, his brows slightly knitted and he said, youngsters nowadays sure are courageous to consume everything recklessly. To even dare to eat a medicinal herb like rosin flower indiscriminately. Rosin flower. Ling Chen's body suddenly stiffened. Even if he wasn't a physician, he had also heard of a medicinal herb called rosin flower. Reportedly, this herb only had one effect, which was to allow someone who was healthy to look as if they were a sickly person. As this medicinal herb did not have any beneficial effects, medicinal shops would rarely sell this herb. However, if one were to consume rosin flower frequently, it would ultimately cause one's physique to become frail and weak. As such, the elderly man had spoken such words. Young master. A trace of anxiousness streaked across Xia Qi's face. She hurriedly pulled on Ling Chen's hand and spoke, young master, listen to me. Everything I've done is for. Bang. Ling Chen fiercely flung Xia Qi's hands away, causing her to retreat a few steps and fall heavily on the ground, with a complexion as pale as a ghost. Ling Chen bellowed, Xia Qi, you've always been deceiving me. No wonder your old illness would recur whenever I looked for Hong Luan, and due to guilt, I always returned to your side every single time. Yet in the end, it was merely a plot. Ling Chen's heart seemed to have been pricked by needles, and it was incomparably painful. The person he loved wholeheartedly was a scheming woman who could even sacrifice her health to obtain him. Besides, she tried to seduce young Luo Feng, but after being rejected, attempted to frame her. How could such a woman be the Xia Qi that was pure and honest in his heart? Young master. Chu Xia's voice choked with emotions. Everything I've done is all because I love you. You love me, ha ha. Ling Chen laughed wildly, and his laughter was deranged, and his footsteps staggered. He then spoke in a pained manner, I wonder if there was ever any truth behind anything you've told me. A few days ago you told me that your heart would never change even if you saw someone better, but after seeing young Luo Feng's devastatingly gorgeous appearance, you attempted to seduce her. Is this the commitment you have for me? I didn't. Xia Qi's eyes were filled with tears as she shook her head while her voice trembled. Chapter 1349. Unrivaled in being shameless. 7. You never tried to seduce her. Could it be that she seduced you? If young Luo Feng wasn't a woman, perhaps I would have believed you. It was only because young Luo Feng was a woman that he understood how scary this woman Xia Qi was. Xia Qi covered her face, allowing her tears to flow down. She understood that Ling Chen would abandon her, and marrying into the North Province would merely be an unattainable dream. Luoner, Ling Chen raised his head and looked at Hong Luan. His throat was choked with emotions while he was filled with regret. I realize my mistakes, could you give me another chance? Impossible. Hong Luan rejected him without leaving room to maneuver. No, you're not someone so ruthless. I know that your previous rejection was due to disappointment. Ling Chen's heart clung on his last gleam of hope. Isn't there a saying, broken bones that are well set will become stronger? Since I've realized my mistakes, why are you unwilling to give me a chance? Hong Luan crossed her hands and sized Ling Chen up and down. Her domineering phoenix eyes gradually revealed a disdainful smile. You had an affair with Xia Qi, and your body is filled with germs. Why would you assume that I would accept you? My apologies, I, Hong Luan, will never accept such a sinner. To me, the mistakes you've committed can never be erased, and you no longer have a chance. The woman's cruel words caused Ling Chen's body to stiffen, and alas, he could no longer support his weight and fell heavily on the ground. I'm tired. Young Luo Feng lazily stretched her waist. I'll take a rest first and don't bother me if there's nothing important. After speaking, she shut her doors with a bang. The situation could be taken care of by Hong Luan now and didn't require her to get involved. Men, invite Ling Chen to leave the estate. Hong Ling clenched his teeth and spoke. From today forward, the governor's estate does not welcome his presence. Also, whoever allowed them to enter today will be arrested and dealt with according to the rules. After handing out his orders, Hong Ling looked at his daughter and said, follow me, I have something to tell you. Hong Luan furrowed her brows and slowly followed behind Hong Ling. Within the room, neither Hong Ling or Hong Luan spoke, and the atmosphere turned stiff, faintly containing oppression. Luoner, in the end, Hong Ling couldn't endure it and spoke, I know that all these years, you've been blaming me for being too snobbish which resulted in you losing your mother. Hong Luan coldly sneered, it's good that you're aware. This matter had been a thorn in her heart for all these years, and it had not lessened in the slightest. However, do you know why are there no heirs appearing in this governor's estate other than you? It's retribution. Even though Hong Ling did not side with Ling Chen this time, she was still unable to eliminate the prejudice she had towards him. If it weren't for him, her mother never would have tried to forcefully break through to prove herself, and what's more, wouldn't have exploded and died. Everything was caused by his obsession to strengthen his power, and so he had married concubines. Hong Ling did not get angry, but instead, smiled bitterly and shook his head. That's because before I take in a concubine, I secretly let them consume a type of medicinal herb that makes them unable to conceive. Hong Luan stared blankly and raised her head in disbelief while looking at Hong Ling in shock. I know that my methods are too cruel and ruthless, but I can give them a life of luxury and unsurpassed status. However, I will never let them conceive my heir. Hong Ling tightly pressed down on Hong Luan's shoulders. Chapter 1350, Unrivaled in Being Shameless 8. In this world, only your mother is fit to give birth to my bloodline. And so, no one can inherit it other than you. If you sincerely loved mother, why did you take in concubines one after another? Even after mother passed away, you're unwilling to let her rest in peace. Luoner, there are some things you don't understand. Hong Ling bitterly smiled. Your mother has passed on, and I can't let our hard work go to waste. Taking in concubines is a method that will allow the East Province to stabilize. Luoner, everything I've done is for you. For me, Hong Luan laughed. You said that taking in concubines was for the East Province and me. I've never believed in those methods of roping in influential figures. I only believe in strength to be able to subdue them. If they were to betray us, it'd be fine if we behead them. There's no need to resort to such methods like yours. Luoner, never having stood in my position, you'll never understand. Now you're the East Province estate's sole descendant, and those concubines that I took in will assist you. If all those people had their children, they would definitely think of replacing Hong Luan. Since they had nothing, they could only protect Hong Luan. Only with her existence would the East Province never be forgotten. Indeed, for the East Province and Hong Luan, Hong Ling had sacrificed and put forth a great effort. Yet, he did not know that Hong Luan deeply disdained everything he had done. Father, I still do not agree with your methods. Right now, you are still able to control the governor's estate for several years, and during this period I will use my strength to prove it to you. Hong Luan paused and said, I will prove to you that my mother wasn't wrong. Hong Ling wanted to say something, but he saw Hong Luan turn to leave without any hesitation, disappearing from his sight in the blink of an eye. After leaving the study room, Hong Luan turned back and glanced at the wide open door. Tightly clenching her fist, she firmed up her inner resolution. Father, although you are a good father, you're not a good man. Therefore, I will prove to you that everything you've done is wrong. Soon after, she turned and walked in another direction. She did not head to her chamber but headed towards young Luo Feng's chambers instead. Seemingly knowing she would arrive, young Luo Feng had prepared a cup of tea beforehand while waiting for her. After Hong Luan came, she asked indifferently, You're here? Hong Luan raised her head. Looking at the young lady before her, her gaze was resolute. At that time, I will leave with you. She knew that after young Luo Feng obtained her desired news, she would leave the East Province. Okay, young Luo Feng only replied a single word, yet it caused a gorgeous smile to blossom on Hong Luan's face. Young Luo Feng, what you said was right. A man who truly loves you will offer you the entire world, and a man who doesn't love you will treat the world of more importance than you. With my departure this time, not only is it to temper myself, but I also wish to find a man who is truly willing to let go of the world for me. Young Luo Feng lightly sipped her tea and asked, How's the progress concerning the man I tasked you to investigate? I came here to inform you about the findings. We've located the Ghost Emperor, but my subordinates are still searching for his specific whereabouts. It shouldn't be too long before we can obtain some news. East Province subordinates could be found throughout the continent, and with the governor's estate's influence, it was much easier to search for someone compared to searching on her own.